Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for those of you that jumped over from the session one DeYoung Museum talk that I just did. And for those of you who didn't see it, I'll put the link below for the session one. This is session two, and I'm going to give a little bit more information about the healing process I went through just using my own artwork and how that led to the components that we talk about and use in a place of our own, especially around family patterns and healing, ancestral healing. And then I'm going to present to you three of the place family artists who've gone through some of the place program and how they use their work to address cultural heritage and ancestral healing. So I'm going to start sharing my screen. Thank you again for being here for this. And if you stay, just stay with us. This should be about an hour. And then right after following we're going to just open it up for all of you. This isn't a webinar where we're just speaking to you. We actually would like you to make comments and ask us questions at the end. So it's more of cup of coffee and a chat after this. So first of all, my name is Cynthia Tom. I'm a visual artist and the founding director for A Place of Her Own. And welcome again, so grateful that you're here. I just wanted to start out with acknowledgements to Yerba Buena Center for the Arts, California Arts Council, San Francisco Arts Commission. Those two organizations have supported Place since 2010. Do a Little Foundation, and then Asian American Women Artists Association is our fiscal sponsor. I also wanted to thank Chris Matos and Susan Almazel for their help with this talk and the photographs especially. And then I wanted to also say that I live and work and walk on coastal Miwok territory and land that they never gave to us. It was taken from them. And again, thanks to the Fine Arts Museums of San Francisco public programs. So just a real quick little background. A Place of Her Own, for those of you that don't know, is an art-based healing program for women. And it asks them over a long period of time, because we stay together as a family through the workshops and the lectures. If you had a place of your own, what would it be? And that's not an easy question to answer. That is about self-agency. So if you had a place of your own, what would it be? And we use found objects, which for me has always turned on my intuition, and discussion, a lot of group discussion to explore and unravel, and then find ways to claim or reclaim who you were before the world got to you. So the agenda today, again, I'm going to show my art as it relates to what sparked what I do with A Place of Her Own. Then next up will be Katie Quan, Manon, Wada, and Zamora, who are all artists in their own right, very different approaches to working with cultural heritage and ancestral healing. And then at the end, I hope you stay with us for a discussion, hopefully lively. You can eat your dinner or have coffee, stick with us. So kind of in a little nutshell, A Place of Her Own is about exploring your family patterns to understand the things that bring you chronic heartache in your decision making, then releasing the patterns using intuitive art making, and then also learning to use your imagination to discover your self-agency. It's almost like redesigning your life with your imagination. And then alumni leadership or our family development, that's where I'm going to bring in the artists. So the art creations, starting with exploring family patterns and looking at my beliefs that have been holding me back into all my adulthood. This is an example of one of my paintings finished. I won't tell you what it means just yet, but just kind of take in what she's doing. And I didn't know what this painting meant. And a lot of times the titles are just as important as the painting, because what happens is my paintings either predict the future for me and probably for society sometimes, but they also basically tell me what to do or tell me what direction to go in. And this particular painting, called Research Series Anthropologic Dig, came right at a time when I started having to look back at what about me was Asian, what was my cultural heritage, but also what what was twisted about my assumptions about cultural heritage. And I looked at my family, of course, my mother and father. It's a great picture by J.W. Deal. And this is the good side. I'm third generation Chinese, native San Franciscan, but not, I wanted to break some stereotypes. Like I grew up listening to old school funk with KSOL and KDIA. I learned to speak and understand Spanish, but not a lick of Chinese, because my parents were so discriminated against when they were younger in San Francisco and Oakland. They didn't want us to have an accent. That's what I was told. But then, and then the other side is there's a lot of Chinese silence, even though my parents weren't traditional Chinese. They were, well, my dad was a first generation actually here, but he was sold. I'll tell you his story in a minute. But there's a lot of silence, which led to me feeling as an adult that I didn't know what I needed to do to earn love. I thought I had to earn love. I thought I had to earn being worthy. And that's something I've just been unraveling from for a while, but in particular, the last couple of years. I'm also a self-taught artist, which I'm very proud of. And I largely use found objects. And the reason I'm showing you the picture on the right is this is one of my mom's found object pieces. And I didn't know this, but she'd been doing found object art her whole life. She didn't know that's what it was called. It's just, and then our family did. We always got broken plates, broken jewelry from our neighbors, and it was like Christmas for us. But it was because we were poor, and it's because she was raised very poor. But she was always making things out of broken things. And these are McDonald's coffee stir sticks from the old days. I don't know if they still have them, but she saved them, spray painted them gold, and made this incredible neck piece. And these are my two brothers. And this is my grandmother. That's my maternal grandmother. And the reason I started researching her, and this is in my 30s, is I was trying to figure out why I was attracted to the wrong men, domestic violence, dominant type of people. And I didn't understand what it was because my parents never argued. I didn't even see them dislike each other. They were always very cordial to each other. Of course, there wasn't a lot of talking, but I could tell they were fine with each other, and they were both doing their artwork. So I looked at my mother's brothers and sisters, my aunts and uncles, and quite a few of them were in domestic violence situations with addicts or in very dominant situations, male and female. So I decided to look at my mom's mother, who I wasn't close to. She didn't speak English. I didn't speak Chinese. And when I was about, I don't know, I think I was 15, she passed away. So I didn't know anything about her until I started going to the archives at the San Francisco airport and near there. And I found her interrogation papers. And that's when I found out that she was sold. My grandfather was privileged. He was born to somebody who was the supervisor for Leland Stanford, a Chinese man. And he lost his first wife. She died. So my grandfather went to China to get a second wife, which is basically a servant. And so she was sold and brought to the US. So at that time, I started painting portraits when I discovered this, and I wanted to paint this for her. And I didn't know it at the time, but it was my way of showing her I love her, even though she's long passed. And when I painted this the whole time, I just cried. And I noticed it was because her eyes looked so sad. And then I can't remember why, but I started printing vintage photos on fabric. And I started creating these little pillows of my grandmother, my father, and my mother. And it was my way of kind of nurturing them. I don't know what it was, but it made me want to take care of them. And I feel like it was a time travel thing where I was working to heal the past, present, and future by doing this. And then starting to display these pieces on the wall and in art shows on the East and the West Coast. And actually, even in Chicago, they had me put up a show there. And Gallery Route 1 in Point Reyes, California, who I'm very thankful for gave me their whole gallery and told me I could do whatever I want, paint the walls, etc. And then I was able to hang the pillows low enough that people would walk into them. So if you weren't paying attention, you walked into one of the pieces, and then hopefully that would spur you to read the stories on the wall about my maternal grandmother, my mother, and my father. So that got me to thinking about looking at my family patterns. Like, when did I start developing all these assumptions that I didn't matter, that I wasn't worth it? And that's when I ran into this woman, Sylvia LaFair, in my corporate job that I had at the time. She was like a corporate psychologist, and she came in, and her tenant, she wrote a book called Don't Bring It to Work. And it basically says what happens at the dining table happens at the conference table. So if you don't look at your triggers and where in your family history your patterns need to be healed, it just keeps rising up. So I teach this as a foundation for a place of our own, is we have to look at our family patterns of trauma, or what I refer to as hungry ghosts. So the second big tenet is releasing the patterns through intuitive art making. So once you start pointing out these hungry ghosts, which is very triggering, but it's where the point of healing can begin. I figured this out by just going inside and stop looking for anybody to blame or situations to blame, but I had to start going within, and this painting brought that to my attention. There's a little curtain with an opening here. And that's when I started trying to develop my intuition. This was, early 2000. And again, another painting that I still have, swimming in intuition. And this is my way of meditating or telling myself to just go there, to just live in my intuition. And this is one of the art projects that came up that I have women do. And anybody can do these. And this came out of my intuition, but it was writing a love letter to myself, using collage as a gift to yourself, not your inner child, but your actual little self at a certain age. And what I find is the photos that actually come up are the age you're supposed to be healing. And this is a very hard thing to do. I rarely run into someone who could just write something kind to themselves. And usually you have to unpack the family trauma, the family patterns, to then begin to realize what you need to start saying to yourself to support yourself. And I still have a tough time. This was the original mock-up I did for this workshop. And it's a way to practice saying kind things to your little self, your actual little self. And this is an excerpt from Jane the Virgin, the TV show. It's amazing. It's a christening from a mother to a child, her child. It's a beautiful thing. So the third is beginning to really search your imagination and aspirations to find this self-agency and confidence to claim the life that you want to have. And one of the things, this is a painting that has been very iconic for me. I've painted 3 different versions so far. And again, the title is what gave me the clue to what it means. And I believe that this isn't just true for myself, but it's true for society and underrepresented, underserved communities. And we could have all the opportunities and the rights in the world, but if we don't heal ourselves first from the trauma, the ancestral trauma, there's so much from colonization, forced migration, slavery, we can't take full advantage of these opportunities. And that's what I found for myself. And I feel like that resonates for any community. It's that we have to look at, before you can change anything, you have to begin to heal the person from the inside. And then another painting I started doing because I wanted help. I wanted to be surrounded by more women who weren't competing and who only wanted to support me, and I could support them. And I painted this in front of my father as he was passing. And he had never, in about 8 years, he had never mentioned my paintings, even though they were all over my home, on the walls, everywhere. But he would tell my friends and they would tell me. So, but he was a captive audience for this, bless his heart. So when I painted this, I had no idea what was going to happen. The women's faces, I did not predict. I just let them come out. And it's called Gathering Elements of Support. And this is still my big wish today, This is a soul collage card. So this is a little 5x7 card. And I collaged a print of the painting because I no longer have the painting, it's sold. But I used the print on different things. And this collage card is one I sit in front of me as I'm meditating a lot to remind myself that I have feminine energies all around me supporting supporting me. And then this is another to carry on with that. I used to look at the Emperor's Tomb in China for decades. And I just wondered where the women were. Why weren't the women represented? Because none of these guys would have shown up without the women, their mothers. They even show horses here, but not the women. So I decided to start a sketch that felt like that to me. I would have loved to do a giant fountain or something and just represent the mothers, but I don't have the capacity. So the idea is trying to vibrationally encourage women and female energies or feminine energies to come together in solidarity. And this first sketch is the one I hope is the beginning of many, where women are just gathering, or feminine energies are just gathering together. And over time, the idea is that they will rise up. And as they rise up, that means they're finding their voice, they're healed, they can take advantage of those opportunities that are being presented. And the really wonderful thing to me is, while I was doing this, I got a call or an email from the Archives of American Art at the Smithsonian, and I was invited as an artist who works with feminism to submit a piece. So this piece is permanently in their What is Feminist Art collection and up online. And I think it's still in person, but I'm not sure about that. But it's permanently there, and I'm very proud of that. And thank you, Mary Savig, for carrying on. And this is the painting that came from that sketch. And this is one, I guess, what I'm hoping is in a series of 5. And again, over time, this is 9 feet long and about 7 feet high. Over time, I'm hoping that they will begin to take on more color and rise higher. So with regard to alumni leadership and growth, this is the last painting, and then I'll turn you over to the other artists. This painting is in my house still. This is iconic for me because this is what told me that my life is going to be about community service. But the key is this dress, which is based on a Vera Wang wedding dress. It's about learning to be solid in who you are. Like that's why I work so hard on healing myself before anything else. But that you understand what your gifts are, that so you can leave them behind with people, communities, places that need them, and that you stay strong in yourself, that it doesn't diminish you. So with that being said, now I want to move us to A Place of Our Own segment. And I'm available to talk if any of you need to find out more about A Place of Our Own. You can find us through the websites. It's cynthiatom.com or aplaceofourown.org. But now I'm going to introduce you to Katie, Quan, Manon, Wada, and Zamora. And I want to say that it took a lot for them to get here. It takes a lot for us to get up in front of you and speak. It takes years of development and confidence and story and the artwork to show you. So please stay tuned and go get a cup of coffee if you need, but we're going to start right now. So thank you. Thank you for being here.
All right, so okay. I'm going to share my screen. So hi everyone, my name is Katie Quan, and I joined Place in 2019. I had known Cynthia pretty much, I believe, since 2016, 2017, something like that. And I had interned at AWA, the Asian American Women's Artists Association, and really dove straight into it. I have been in Asian American studies and Asian American communities for quite some time. And so when Cynthia had asked me, would you want to join? It was something that I was definitely interested in. However, I felt I didn't have enough, we'll say, quote unquote, trauma to go through it. I felt like, when we think of trauma, it was it's something else. And I felt like I didn't qualify for it. And so Cynthia had very, very patiently explained to me that trauma comes in all shapes and sizes, and I should not let that deter me. And so this was the piece that actually came out of place in 2020 during the pandemic. My grandfather had just passed about a year before, and I spent a lot of that time really processing that. And so Cynthia had mentioned that there are more or less three stages that people in place go through. One, which is exploring family patterns, and then doing art, and then being able to really put that into your community. And I've been doing art since I was at least 5 years old. This is a comic that I did when I was in high school. Being able to just express myself and being able to use comics as a medium for self-exploration was really fundamental to me, not only feeling like I had a place in high school, but just being able to understand that there's many ways of being. And so I continue to do comics. I post a lot of those comics on Instagram or on Facebook, and being able to start sharing that with other people on social media was such a huge revelation, because there were a lot of people who, were able to connect to it. And I was really surprised, I think, at that time. And there would be times where I would post these, more depressing kind of comics, and that people would reach out. And, it was just really, really touching for me to realize that people actually read them, people really cared and wanted to make sure that I was okay at all times. And I don't think I was used to people checking in like that. And so currently, I am working on curriculum for elementary and middle school classrooms. These are a few of those posters. And some of those ideas is basically to tell the history of many different groups of people. I work to try and make this information as accessible as possible. It's something that I want to make sure that even though you're not Asian, that there's always a sense of solidarity and empathy with other groups. And so going along with the self-agency, the third stage of place, a lot of those ideas is really encouraging people to observe, to reflect on their own upbringings, to be able to use it almost as if it's this very masterful I spy, and then challenging each other to think further or think beyond. And so with that, a lot of my work has been around my own experience, has been around a lot of giving back to the community. And it was actually the family patterns, surprisingly, that really tripped me up, I'd say. I knew my family story. I had learned it from a very early age. And it was something that I hadn't quite, I never really went further into it. And so instead of going from 1, 2, 3 in stages, I went 2, 3, and then 1. And I'm constantly going back to it. At this point, it's been about 2 years since place. And I'm constantly, especially now that I'm planning a wedding, I'm wrestling with it and trying to figure out how it best suits me, or how I can begin to mix things up. And so I created a performative piece. I hope you don't mind. And yeah, I'll just run through it, and I hope you enjoy. Hi, I'm Katie, and this is me. I teach Asian American history at City College. I'm a comic artist. I freelance. I also run a small business. I've never held down a full-time job for over a year, and I never plan to. I've been told that I don't live in the real world. When I think of healing, I think there's nothing wrong with me. I'm the oldest of 3 kids, lawyer, environmental engineer. And this is my mom. She works in nonprofit childcare. And that's my dad. He's retired. He has a background in finance and public health. And that's Katsu. She's my dad's dog. I'm 3rd generation Chinese American, meaning my grandparents moved to the United States. My mama and yaya came in the 1930s and 1940s. To me, they were American Gothic. I didn't know much about them. I learned after my mama's passing that because of the Chinese Exclusion Act, it was extremely hard for Chinese to come into the United States. My mama came as a paper daughter. She did not have proper documentation. She feared deportation for decades. And as a woman, she was not in her family tree for years. My dad wrote her in. She valued education very much. She saw it as a way of moving up in society. She was timely, strict. She loved opera and classical music. And in the 1960s, she became a citizen of the United States. She took care of my yaya until he passed. And I wanted to take care of her until she passed when I was 14. My yaya came as a merchant. I don't know much about him. He was a man of very few words. He dropped out of the 6th grade to work at his family's grocery store in Oakland, and eventually he became the store owner. My dad says he was robbed several times a year, but he never complained. He loved painting and was inspired by the work of Dong Kingmin, and he taught my sister and I horse stance. And I spend a lot of time trying not to tip over these days. When my mama hears about healing, she says, leave the past in the past and don't stir up any trouble. I spent my summers with my maternal grandparents, my papa and my gongong. Located in Orange, California, they lived in the suburbs and they were the American dream. My papa is everything. She's confident, bold. Everyone loves her. She went to a Catholic school in Macau, and they lived in a giant house. It's now an elementary school. She attended Clark College and taught herself English. She's became a children's librarian, and she used to take my sister and I to the library, and we would spend hours and hours of books in towers of books. She learned about stocks and investments on her own, and she sews her own clothes. She loves the arts. She's bigger than life. And some say she was born under a lucky star. I think it was a lucky constellation. My gongong was my everything. He was quiet, supportive. Everyone loved him. And he was the 9th of 9 kids. He was in China when the Japanese invaded. He hid in caves. In the States, he was investigated by the FBI, and he kicked in his sleep. When I was younger, he took me to the park to feed the ducks. We went to McDonald's for the play structure and for cheap burgers. He promised me that if I drank all my milk, we would travel the world. He said he would always take care of me. He loved unconditionally. I miss him. I've always felt like an outsider in my family, too old to be at the kids' table and too young to be with the grown-ups. When my gongong passed, I felt invisible. When my family talks of healing, they speak of luxury. Healing is a luxury even we can't afford. When my mom thinks of healing, she thinks it's too touchy-feely, not enough action. I bury myself in work, and this is where I feel wanted. See, I was taught that there were two types of people, yaoyong and moyong, useful and not useful. Right now, my to-do list is filled with incomplete tasks. I am planning 5 new syllabi. I'm organizing a wedding. I'm creating a 3, 4, 5-year strategic plan. I'm producing a future. I'm making stuff. I'm doing stuff. I'm saying stuff. I'm creating something brand new to show you. I'm being useful. I believe learning about my family history changed everything. I was suddenly part of a legacy of artists and teachers. Community service and leadership courses through my body. The love for history runs in my blood. I learned of all the good things that were passed down through the generations. There are also a lot of bad things that were handed down. And sometimes these things blur. However, these are qualities that have kept my family alive for generations. Good or bad, they were defense mechanisms to keep us going. And if we want to keep going, that's okay. But if we want to improve our way of life, it may be time to reevaluate, critique, analyze, and rest. And when I think of healing, I think I still have ways to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Katie. Up next is Manon. Wada.
Hi, my name's Manon. I'm originally from and currently based in New York City on unceded Canarsie-Munsee Lenape territory. And I originally, in between that, I lived a longer length of time in the San Francisco Bay Area on unceded Muwekma Ramaytush Ohlone land. I first got involved with A Place of Our Own in 2014, and then continued to be involved in later generations of it. I often make work that investigates combinations of rupture, repair, and empathy. The 10 pieces that I'm going to share with you are either directly related to place, as in they were in exhibitions, involve other place artists, speak to cultural heritage, or a shifting mending process. Sorry. These first works are from a series of sculptures created from 6 family heirloom chairs. Pictured here are 3 installation sketches. Thirsty Ghosts is a contemporary interpretation of hungry ghosts found in many Asian cultures and are typically characterized as lost or unhappy spirits that haunt the living. This sculpture was initially created for an exhibition on hungry ghosts through Asian American Women Artists Association, AWA. The curatorial concept for using hungry ghosts was first conceived by Lisa Chu. A Place of Her Own later embraced the idea of using hungry ghosts to speak about trauma. This work was made for A Place of Her Own curatorial residency at Samart's Cultural Center in 2015. This installation responded to the question, if you had a place of your own, what would it be? I was also responding to the site of Samart's main gallery walls, which are 16 feet tall, and I used the same paint of the gallery walls and floors in the work. Aligning elevation structurally connects and augments 4 family heirloom chairs, mimicking houses built on stilts for safety from environmental flooding. This installation speaks to resilience, notions of home, and strength within family. These next images are meant to give a sense of scale. So the drawing on the left is scaled, and I followed it very closely to make sure this whole work came together on site. And then the image on the right is an installation shot that Cynthia took. This last piece in this series draws upon personal family history of my parents immigrating to the States and my own experience of moving across the country from New York to California as a child. Flux migration is a portal of doors with a dissected chair mirrored to reflect an indefinite divergence of a pathway. So I call these heirloom chairs, even though they were only passed down once. They ended up in my possession because nobody else in my family wanted them. And I was sitting on one when I first thought to use it in a sculpture, and then by the end of it, I had no more chairs to sit on. But I call them heirlooms because they're in the background of so many of my childhood photos that are burnt into my memory. After cutting up all of my family furniture, I went on an artist residency. This next work I'm going to share is called Insight, and I'm actually just going to jump over to a short video that has a narrative description.
This video walking through the piece gives a better sense of being there and inside of it. This work was created at an artist residency called Kampong in Doi Saket outside of Chiang Mai in northern Thailand. Insight is an in situ experiment made through the removal of soil. 2 pathways that are parallel yet misaligned descend into the earth and meet at the deepest section at the center. This work responds to the landscape of the artist residency's property, including a natural gateway created by 2 trees and a pathway just beyond that continues onto a main road.
Insight was activated by audience interaction, and pictured here are the couple who ran the residency, Maureen and founder Ong Sarapasit. The arrangement of the seating created a shared experience being at eye level with the earth, with mirrored yet ultimately offset perspectives. I was thinking of them when I designed the work with seats for 2. At the time when I completed this piece in mid-November of 2016, the celebrations of Yipeng and Loy Krathong were occurring, which use these brightly burning candles. In these images, the inside perimeter of Insight is activated by candles to cast the cavity in light and also highlight a temporary moment of this impermanent piece. So when I was in Thailand, I was thinking a lot about my cousin who was born and raised in Bangkok, and he also died in a violent way. He was the initial inspiration for this work. Wandering Home was a collaborative installation for public interaction that I worked on with Reiko Fuji and Maggie Yi, both past place artists. It features a found dollhouse that belonged to Cynthia. We asked all current place artists at the time in 2017 to submit images of self-identified hungry ghosts, which Reiko then infused onto jars, as pictured here. We invited the audience to write notes to their personal hungry ghosts that they wished to honor and release. sorry. Audience members then left them behind in the smaller floating houses fabricated by Maggie, as pictured on the left. Wandering Home was first installed at Gallery Route 1 in Point Reyes, later at J.C. Center in Emeryville and Marin Museum of Contemporary Art, all in California. We collected over 360 notes to Hungry Ghosts from audience participants. In 2019, we shared the notes amongst place artists and burnt them on Muir Beach. We were actually joking because the installation was being kept at Reiko's house that we didn't want all these notes to start haunting her house. So that's kind of how we decided to burn and release all of these notes, which some of them were really heartbreaking, and it was very intergenerational. They were like notes from children, and it was very moving to read all of them. So moving along to another piece involving a past place artist, Irene Wabawa. So this work's called Unwriting Your Loss May Require Time Travel, and it's part of a series engaging with narratives of loss. And for it, I was responding to writing from invited participant Irene Wabawa. I asked a small group of individuals I know from the Bay Area to write about something they had lost. I identified them as having helped me find something significant, and in return, I proposed to attempt at finding what they had lost through written and visual response. So this piece started as a sculpture as pictured here. I wanted to capture a sense of losing time gradually, as Irene had written about, as well as recapture and suspend a sense of a moment she described with her family when she was younger. And so later on, Irene and I recorded ourselves reading our writing and then switching places by reading each other's writing. And so I'm going to share a shortened video projected about the sculpture. It's 1 minute long.
I lost time gradually. It wasn't an immediate loss. I probably lost most of it during my 20s and 30s when I was more self-absorbed and felt more immortal and couldn't imagine the idea of mortality. I lost it when I was 10 too. I was impatient with my grandmother who came to live with us for 6 months.
Unwriting your loss may require time travel or surgery of the hippocampus. One or both of these could go awry. Rewinding immortal wrinkled, the mechanisms of internal body clocks that are memories storied in buildings that are your skeletal structure, your muscles and skin, your fabric that's stitched and locked together when severed unravels identity wouldn't tie threads to familial kin. The other option is gradual.
So this next work, I also consider belonging to that series on narratives of loss. It's called Digestion. This image documents the work, which is primarily a video piece. It features the suitcase that my father immigrated to the United States with from Kyoto, Japan to New York City. The suitcase is dissected, and one half holds a mini projector that then projects onto a fabric screen on the other side. I'm going to share a shortened and edited portion of the video with you, which has a narrative description spoken over it.
In the video, I process a number of materials that my father was discarding, which included a chair, a floor plan, and a letter. The original sequence loosely correlated to the stages of digestion. This edited sequence has a different arrangement with internal mirroring processing the materials mentioned. Referencing a print of the parlor-level floor plan of a lost family home in San Francisco, I proportionally recreated it in pieces with salvage trim molding that is covered in tape. The chair was found by my father in Manhattan and happened to match 2 others he already had. He gave me that found chair, and while using it, it slowly started to come apart. As seen here, I disassemble it and then later put it back together. The word digestion is slowly being translated with the moving text titles. The last item featured is a Xerox letter from my estranged grandmother, who I never met, that was written to my father a long time ago. I was told it had heavy content, but he wouldn't translate it. I don't know what it says. In the video sections, I'm seen tracing and then later erasing a portion of it. the final recording of the originals of my father and I eating takeout sushi with forks. This is something he started doing in later years, which I always thought was quite humorous and seemed like a fitting visual metaphor. The closing title of the piece was projected onto the front of the suitcase.
Invisible Exit was made in collaboration with Mia Reiko Braverman for Rites of Passage project in 2021 at Whitney Center for the Arts in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It was installed in a stairway leading to an attic. Meditating on death, we considered its mysterious character yet its stark boundary, its speed to strike with grief and its residue of release. In the process of working on this installation, my father passed away suddenly. The collection of ashes was a shredded paper trail of his documents, the wooden pillars from constructed furniture in his home, and the bowls were inherited. The audio piece in this installation is layered with singing glass vessels, Mia passing through a river, and our breaths held and then exhaled. I'm going to share a short clip of the installation, and it was mainly to share a portion of the audio, but I think it's a little skewed here on Zoom. But you'll hear someone, for Mia, my collaborator, she's walking through water, and there's singing glass vessels, and then our breaths inhaling and exhaling. The last work that I'm going to share is a socially engaged, collaborative, and co-authored project made with co-convener Sonia Manon. It started as a research grant I had and shifted into a response to a past mentor of mine, Sonia's writing about loss. So quoting an excerpt of her writing, "I lost my optimism about race relations in America and desperately need to find it so I can believe in humanity again." And so this website became a response to her writing, but it then became collaborative. And I'm just going to read part of the mission statement, which is also an open call and a description. Counter Narratives of Her Story Census features a collection of writing from women of color which reports incidents of injustice and is rooted in a restorative practice. This project intends to offer a visible and accessible platform to record, witness, and share each other's stories. And so I'd also like to acknowledge the web designers of this project, Alice Lynn and Daisy Ozim. This next screenshot of the website shows the archive of writing submitted. We have one from Cynthia on there. And so this is an ongoing project, meaning that submissions are still accepted. And here you can see the restorative practice questions. So there's a section where you can share your own story. And so the restorative practice questions are meant to reflect on the incident that occurred. And I also ended up doing a physical installation of this for Rites of Passage project that I was just mentioning. But this project is mostly a website. But it felt fitting to exhibit it for Rites of Passage, as it was a show of all BIPOC women. And so I just want to say thank you for listening. And up next, we have Paz Zamora.
Thank you, Manon. That was wonderful. Yay, Paz.
Hey, how's everybody doing? Good evening. Sending you love to wherever you're at tonight, and just thanking you for taking the time to be with us. I am going to share my screen here for a moment, and my coworker would be so proud of me that I can do this now. I wanted to start first with the land acknowledgement as an uninvited guest on the ancestral lands and trading routes of the Northern Valley Yokut. I honor the sovereign watersheds, the birthing traditions, the languages, and the food systems, and I commit to being a responsible guest on these lands. And this is really important, these land acknowledgements, because they are reminders of our ancestors, and they're not just words that we say because we have to. And so I'm really grateful to honor those that are here before. I am going to, okay. My name is Patricia Ann Zamora. Some of you know me as Paz. And this is a picture of my mother, Genevieve Estrada Zamora. And my mother was a dear friend and my biggest supporter of my art practice through place and my family healing. She used to tell us, I was so busy raising and caring for 9 children, I couldn't give you the attention and support that you needed. But I'm here to listen to you now. And she did. In her 80s, my mother came to all the place events, and she spoke at the last of my 2 artist talks with other family members who attended. I'm just going to take a minute here. And I was very happy that she got to meet Cynthia and my place sisters. A little bit about myself and my art. My fire for justice sparked as a youth when I was translated from my father, who became disabled at a young age working in a local cannery. I was born and raised in the Central Valley, and I'm one of 9 siblings, 8 girls and 1 boy. Over the years, I worked as a community organizer, an advocate for clean water, farm worker and immigrant rights, and with youth and their families in the Central Valley, Chicago, and San Francisco. As an artist, I honor my ancestors who have come before me. I stand on their shoulders because they have upheld our culture, our family traditions and patterns, and beliefs that were passed down to me. But along with their beauty also came their pain. And I have this picture because I was about that age when I started translating for my father. And that's my father and mother on the tractor at my grandpa's house. I have been, in my art, I seek to heal those ways that no longer serve my divine purpose on this earth and for those generations that are coming behind me. I have been actively engaged in Place for 7 years. And Place is a 6-month residency program that's held every 2 years. I didn't look for Place. A friend invited me to join her in taking that program, and I was struggling. I've always worked in the community without taking the time to look inward. I was what was called a wounded healer. I desperately wanted to help my parents, my family and friends and community, and seeing firsthand in my own life cycle the violence and abuse and destructive ways in coping through addiction. I didn't want to look at my own destructive patterns that were playing out in my life. For me, Place was the first time I could truly explore that pain that I had learned as a child to keep buried inside. I know I'm not alone. I know that you're here. In Place, members share similar family patterns, and believe me, we all have them, that may have been handed down in our families generation after generation. In Place, we are asked to explore the question through art: if I had a place of my own, what would it be? Sounds simple, right? Sounds very simple. But along the way, so many feelings come up around guilt, shame, anger, self-doubt, and grief for what has been lost. In place, we use art to help express ourselves. And for me, that is the most important part of my healing. I have a place to channel my pain and transform and release it through my art making. Something beauty-filled is created from past pain, and new ways of being can happen. 2016 was my first place residency. And we always start place with a check-in, a circle to see how everyone is doing and what's coming up for each of us as we explore the different themes and then make art around that theme. At the end of the 6 months, we create an art piece and artist talk in which we celebrate with family and friends in the community what we are learning. This part is not easy, to be vulnerable, but it is necessary for others as much as it is for us. When I joined Place in 2016, I was burned out from my family pattern of pushing myself to exhaustion, always trying to help others while not attending to myself. Always longing for deep connection without working on my own spiritual connection. My art pieces frequently incorporate words or poems that speak to what I am going through at the time. This particular piece of art has a poem in the art piece. I'm not going to read the whole poem, but I'm going to read an excerpt, and it's called Love After Love by Derek Walcott. And it says, "The time will come when with elation, you will greet yourself arriving at your own door in your own mirror, and each will smile at the other's welcome. You will love again the stranger who was yourself. Give back to your heart. Give back to your heart, to itself, to the stranger who has loved you all your life, whom you ignored, for another who knows you by heart." In 2018, I did my second residency with Place, and I focused deeply on understanding my family patterns because, as I learned in my first residency with Place, I couldn't imagine a loving place of my own without examining my self-hatred and internalized oppression. As an Indigenous person whose family's from Mexico, I did not cross the border. The borders crossed my ancestors, we became aliens and wetbacks in North America. Capitalism is about the exploitation of the many for the benefit of the few, and white supremacy is necessary to keep us divided and conquered. And many Mexicans are not proud of their Indigenous roots and hate their own skin color, culture, and traditions. In Place, we have many cultures and traditions. And one of the teachings I learned about was the 7 chakras, which are energy centers in the body that correspond to our emotions and physical well-being, starting at the base of the spine to the top of the head. Each chakra has a purpose in our body. As you can see, the first one is the root, the second is the power, I feel. The third is I do, which to me is creativity. The fourth is I love, which is our heart. The fifth is I speak, voice. I see, vision. And the seventh is I understand, which is spirit. And so we are often told to get healthy. But how do we do that when we're carrying so much inside? And these chakras really influenced a lot of my work. And I started thinking about the word healthy, which is made of 2 words, lo and behold, heal thy. And in this art piece, Heal Thy, I wanted to visually show how destructive family patterns of 7 generations of trauma lived in my body. In this piece, you see the names, the addictions mapped out from past ancestors. It was also scary to see the same patterns of trauma being mapped out in my own generation and the younger generations. I included in my art piece, Heal Thy, a poem by Mary Tall Mountain titled For the Love of the World, dedicated as a prayer to myself, my mother, and women in my family who are each uniquely on their healing journeys. And this is an excerpt. For the love of the earth, she dug deeper. For the love of community, she mended fences. For the love of the stars, she let her light shine. For the love of the spirit, I'm not a good crier. I'm a crier where it's like my voice goes out and everything. It's okay. This is part of release, and we should cry. There might be less wars in the world if people cried more. For the love of spirit, she nurtured her soul. For the love of God, she drew down the moon. For the love of family, she reconciled differences. And for the love of creativity, she entertained new possibilities. For the love of her enemies, she suspended judgment. And for the love of herself, she acknowledged her own worth. And the world was richer for her. In 2019, I created another art piece called Root to Spirit that was beginning to reimagine healthy chakras in our family's generational healing. And that's a picture of my partner, Michael, and my mother, again. And Root to Spirit is made up of 7 panels representing the 7 generations of my family that I can identify. This is the voice chakra, and these are all my nieces. And then this is another example. Each panel contains pictures of my actual family members from that generation. An animal represents a symbol is my prayer for their healing in that generation. And the photos that you see in the background, that's actually on the land that I pass on my visits between my work in the Bay and my family home in the Central Valley. In my healing process, which I have been on since I was a child, that's a picture of my mom and dad and my siblings. I need to do something that releases the stress of working through intense issues. And not only from the past, but currently there's a trauma that is still continuing to fester in old family ways of relating to each other. I'm also a circle keeper in restorative justice, and I have introduced this to my family. The talking circle to begin to learn to celebrate and reconnect with each other, as well as to listen to each other when difficult issues arrive, such as relapse, homelessness, addiction, and caring at that time for my mother when she was alive. Through place, I was given new tools to help me heal, and I created an active practice of inviting my family to participate in some of the place activities, such as intuitive collage and my artist talks. So you see there was like 4 generations of my family that participated in that. That's my mom there, my sisters. Here are some of the collages created by my family, and they shared what they came up with in the collage making. So you see there's really young ones that are participating as well. This is before we did the Root to Spirit show at Marin Mocha. My families did their own show preview, and we talked about the pieces that were created. And then later, some of these family members spoke at the Hungry Ghost show there. And so it's really important to me in my practice. I identify more as a social practitioner. As you can see, that art is a medicine. To me, this place is a medicine. And so I take that medicine back into my family. And it's always an invitation. I cannot make anybody participate. And it is not a magic wand, because there's a lot of things that will come up. But because we have been doing work as a family in Circle now for many years, we are starting to find this easier, but it's not easy. In 2020, the pandemic struck, and we were in the middle of our place residency, and immediately Cynthia shifted us online to Zoom to provide support and connection during that difficult time, and to encourage us to continue to work on our art pieces. For the first time, we did our culminating talk on Zoom and used found objects from our home in our art piece. I was sheltering in place with my mom and sisters, and I felt excited and freed up to be able to use my mother's clothesline in the backyard. The clothesline was a metaphor for airing out the dirty laundry that in our family healing process and the necessary washing and cleansing to release. My family is the last of our extended family to live on Peach Street. We've been in that area for about 100 years. And I began to reimagine how could our land be used as a healing space for recovery from addiction, violence, self-doubt, and fear. Instead, be a place of acceptance, love, creativity, and culture, while taking care of our family home to be kept in our family for generations to come. And I began to imagine, what could I do in that yard? Maybe I could do poetry, I could do exhibitions, circles of support, meditation, celebrations, and reconnection to my indigeneity. So I started with this installation during the pandemic, which was made up of 7 white curtains, again, representing each generation of my family and the healing of the 7 chakras. And my sister Eva and Martha and my mom helped me install this Heal Thy Art piece. And while we installed the art, of course, we continued to dialogue. And this was part of helping us create new family patterns. We also experimented with the different letters, what would it look like? And this was a piece we came up with. And my mother is, you can see her walker, it's kind of like in the left far right-hand corner. My place during the pandemic and after the pandemic and my mother's death became my family home in the land. And so what I realized is that we started rededicating the land as this place now of healing and possibility. And so an example was my sister and I would meet over during the pandemic. We lived together, and every morning we would have a lot of really intense conversations because she was in relapse and also recovery. And so we would get mad, but every morning we would meet out on the rocks and we would talk about things that were coming up from very old family patterns. And I started to create this installation of river rocks that were brought to the land by my father. I use them as prayer. We use these traditionally when you go on a vision quest as prayer ties. And each one of these rocks is dedicated to a family member, friend, or cause I was thinking of. There's probably over 100 rocks. And this was a rededication of the land. And my hope was that one day to hold a healing circle in the center of these rocks. And for me, when I see these prayer rocks, I feel peace and hope. And I create in my life practice, my life is art, and I create daily reminders of healing, such as the prayer rock meditation installation. I'm still very actively in the healing process in myself and with family. And so it's very important for me to create art and medicine that is very accessible to the community, that literally you can walk up to your clothesline and you can heal and you can create something of beauty. This was another thing that we did as well. We did for the first time, we celebrated our first Dia de los Muertos on the land, and my mother had passed, and it was to honor the 7 generations of our extended family who are living through our family, me, who are still left. And it was also remembering the loved ones that we lost to COVID, because we had many people that lost sometimes 3 family members in a month. And there was a lot of mourning around that. And also, this was done with my cousins, sisters, and friends. We created 6 altars, and this is my cousin. She's actually doing this installation with her granddaughter. And this was the installation at night. We used things that we found in the yard. And it was interesting. It was really tragic because both of my mother's sisters attended. And then tragically, 2 days later, one of my last 2 aunts, she passed unexpectedly. But we were really grateful that she could be with us in this healing space. And she got it. They had never come to something like this, but she understood why we were doing it. And both of my aunts gave us the blessing. And we also had folks from Chicago, all over California that joined us virtually. This is another program that I've done here also in October with Soul Collage and with Cynthia. This was a Zoom hybrid class, which means that some people are in person and then some people are on camera with us. And we had folks from the Bay, Chicago, and Central Valley. These are some of the women who participated. This was a Soul Collage card. And the other thing I wanted to share most recently that I did was an elk drum making class, which was hosted by Dr. Ponca Sandoval, who is Associate Professor of Native American and Mexican Indigenous Studies and the Indigenous Student Alliance at my alma mater, Stanislaus State. And this was my dream come true. Actually, that day we had 26 of, I did not take pictures because I wanted to be respectful of, sometimes in ritual, you do not take pictures without permission, but we had 26 people standing in those river rock installation, from the youngest here, who was 1.5 years old. And I think the eldest was about 68 years old. And we had mothers with their sons, siblings, babies. So it's really beautiful that we all got there. And Chunya is the teacher that we've worked with a lot in this. And these are elk drums, and that's part of the studio in the back. And that's Cueponca with the red. She's amazing. Embroidered shirt. And so what's next for me and my social practice and place? Between each residency, I stay connected with Cynthia and other alum for support and also inspiration. And the majority of place members, we are very active in our families and communities. And in place, our leadership and artistic opportunities are about self-care and healing. And this is not a luxury, it's a necessity. And I believe that trauma becomes drama when old wounds fester in me, and it affects everything I do and how I show up. I'm very grateful for Cynthia and Place Sisters and family in supporting this, my healing journey, because I know that it helps others stay on track in their journey, hopefully. I am now in the leadership circle with Place as a facilitator, and I wanted to, one of my dreams was to share this program with community in the Central Valley, in which Merced County, there's 58 counties, and Merced County is like 58, like the bottom two for women, education, health, economics. So I'm really happy that we are launching, I'm happy to say we are launching 7 Generations Coming Home Healing Space. And this is going to be in the Central Valley. And I want to thank we have funding from the California Arts Council. We will offer the program on Zoom and also in place at Livingston at 7 Generations. And also the name 7 Generations Coming Home is based on the Native American belief that it takes 7 generations, quote, to heal the broken circle, and that the decisions we make today will result in a sustainable world for 7 generations in the future. So I want to thank you all, and don't be worried about me. I cry. I love you all for showing up, and I feel really blessed and excited about what's to come. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Paz. Can you stop? Thank you. Your screen share. Thank you, Paz. Thank you, Katie. And thank you, Manon, for being so open and candid. So what we're going to do right now, we're running later than the schedule says, but when you talk about this kind of work, you just got to go with it. So if you're willing to stay with us, I don't know about you guys, but I need a bio break, and you get a cup of coffee. If you want to eat dinner on screen, we're totally down with that. There's some people here, I want you guys to meet each other, and I'd love you to just say or ask us anything that's top of mind. The one thing I didn't do, because we were trying to get everything done in an hour, is when we come back, I'm going to just do a quick grounding to bring us back in the space together. If you have to leave, we understand, because it is 7:20, we're over, but it doesn't matter, whatever over means. We could. So I'm going to take a break for a few minutes and I'll be back really quickly. And I hope you guys all stay with us. So thank you. We'll be back really quickly and get some water or cocktail or whatever you want. So I'll see you in a bit, and we'll take you off mute. So Sherry Arai-Deborah that you guys see here, she and I have been working together for, I don't know, a good 20-some years.
Yeah.
She and I ran AWA, Asian American Women Artists Association, together for a long time. We just did it by the seat of our pants. And now she's still supporting Place of Her Own by helping manage our budgets and our grants, along with Irene Wabawa, who's also here. So I thank you guys very much for that.
Sure. Thanks. No, this is great. I have to run.
I know.
So,
Well,
yeah,
you just, she's got a great, do you want to tell people about Sunsei Daughters?
Oh, hey. Oh yeah, we have a show at five AWA, Asian American Women Artists at AZ Gallery. It's a new gallery in San Bruno at the Shops of Tanforan. So it's a shopping mall, which is great. We're in the middle of this. It's kind of ironic, but it's at Tanforan because it was the site of where they had the temporary detention centers for Japanese Americans at the start of World War II. So it's a very historic setting, and they're dedicating a memorial there to the almost 8,000 people that were incarcerated there. And so they invited us.
Say the name of the show.
Sansei, which is third generation granddaughters. Actually, in the chat, we have a new website, and yeah, it's been a good run. It's through September 3rd. So yeah, thank you for mentioning that.
And there's videos and everything. So
yeah, actually, just today we just posted a virtual walkthrough on our homepage, so you could.
So you can post the website on the chat.
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Thank you, Sherry. So for all of you that are in relatively quiet environment, I'd love it for you to take yourself off mute and love to have a conversation if possible, if you're comfortable. If you're not, that's okay too. So I wanted to start by asking Manon, Paz, and Katie, how you guys feeling? Or are you just kind of out of it right now?
I'll just say real briefly, I don't feel out of it. Actually, I really feel happy to be here. And I think that there needs to be more spaces where we can show up in an active healing. You know, it's not like this thing where we all it's all smooth and all clean and pretty. It's complicated, and I will laugh as much as I will cry. But I feel like, especially when you're working with a lot of communities that are still under a lot of stress and things are going on. For me, it's really important to have an active process where it's my art is around me. I'm being inspired. I'm being held and helping people that they can access that as well. So I feel fine.
Yay. Thank you.
I feel really honored to be here with everyone and sharing space with all the speakers. I'm a little tired as I'm 3 hours ahead, so it's a little harder for me over here on the East Coast. But yeah, I'm feeling fine.
Thank you, Manon.
Yeah, no, I am probably somewhere in between Paz and Manon. It's really hot I'm in San Francisco, but my apartment just happens to have no air circulation, so it's a little bit warm. But yeah, no, gives me a lot to think about. I think one of the things that I've been thinking about recently is that starting to teach classes again, I'm realizing that there's a lot of students who get triggered very easily by many different things now. And I think the way that I was taught was no one really kind of cared about it, to be quite honest. No one really thought twice about it. And so trying to now work with students and figure out sort of what's the best way to address these different issues has been something that I've been really thinking about for this upcoming semester.
Yeah, space to talk openly somehow. I always find that helps. You know, I actually I'd like to take a minute and ask Sylvia, did this give you any insight to how I used your program?
Well,
I took it. I took it somewhere.
It's interesting, Cynthia, because I've just been sitting here wanting to just reach out and give you a great big hug, because we have been on a lot of roller coaster rides over the years. And I think what you did, I mean, I've always loved your art, but what you've done and working with people to express the deeper pain that sometimes you can't really do in words at first is very powerful. And the art that comes out, whatever it is wonderful, because it's heart art. I never said that before, but it's art from the heart that comes out. So I'm just thrilled with what you've done. And my mind is going a little crazy. So I'm warning you, you better feel well. But I want to start a project to bring this kind of thing into the high schools. And we're going to do a pilot project. So all of you doing this wonderful work, we're going to need you. So
Thank you, Sylvia.
yeah.
And Deborah,
wait, I have to
Sure.
tell one. I just have to tell one story, because as I've been listening, I was thinking how we help each other. And Cynthia's art that she did of her grandmother, the one with the blue outside of it, which is so beautiful. We made an agreement. We had gone to China with Thich Nhat Hanh, and we made an agreement to take a replica of the original with us. Remember that?
Yes.
And at one of the monasteries somewhere, I don't even know where the heck we were, but we asked permission, and we did a private ceremony and buried your grandmother back in China.
I think I remember you buried it with trees they were planting or something like that.
Yeah. But the reason I'm bringing it up here is because, you know, here you are, that was your story. Mine is a whole different one, you know. But the coming together of people to share and enjoy the togetherness of different human beings and different cultures, I think is a next step in some of this, and it's pretty important.
So it's a necessary step.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much. And Deborah, you haven't seen us in a while. What did you gather from this?
Well, it really is a cocoon of, and I really don't feel pain. I feel a cocoon of growth and expansion of what our souls have to offer to the world. And it reminds me, of course, when I first went to Point Reyes and saw the first place and was so taken by everyone's art. And then seeing over the years, seeing some of the photos and the Emeryville exhibition and events that I attended where all of you spoke, and then seeing it again here just inspires me to keep doing my art, first of all, and to expand it. But also, I really miss community. It has been hard. I'm in Los Angeles and no longer in the Bay Area, as you know, Cynthia. But I think also because of COVID and everything, the community shifts. And so I really strive now I'm going to strive to be in community more. Even if it's Zoom works.
It does. It does. You know, just piggybacking on what you're saying, a couple of things. First of all, Paz, Manon, and Katie, it's not easy to do this. And of all the place artists, most of them don't want to touch us with a 10-foot pole. So this is a step forward in their leadership development. And we haven't come up with a better word than leadership, but it's not the Western style of leadership, but it is them stepping forward and saying, I do what I am saying is going to help other people, and it is important, and I'm not going to worry about being self-conscious or have self-doubt, which we're full of. So I have to take my hats off to the three of them for doing this. Otherwise, I wouldn't know how to talk. So thank you, guys. And then the other thing is being in community. So we had a program that started in January 2020, and it was supposed to end in June, the end of June, with an art exhibition. But of course, March, we had to shut it down. But I kept them on Zoom. I didn't know what I was doing through September. And all that time, mostly non-artists had to come up with the answer. If you had a place of your own, what would it be? And I couldn't help them figure out how to do art from found objects. And every time I always say, if you have your intention, that the found objects will find you. And I just wing on a prayer, because I usually take them to found object sites to find stuff like scrap or urban ore in the East Bay. But I couldn't take anybody anywhere, and it still worked. They still found stuff. It was amazing. Like Janet, I don't have the picture, but Janet King, she's our indigenous, she's native Lumbee from North Carolina, but she worked for the Native Health Services here. Her mother forbade her to do art from the age of 4. So she hadn't done any art, and her dream was to recreate her Lumbee cabin, which are log cabins, and they're still in North Carolina, I think, in the swamps. And she said she wants this cabin to be a time machine where if you step inside, you can experience your family before they were colonized. And I thought that was brilliant. And somehow in the middle of crazy Oakland, on a great expressway, she found all these little twigs that ended up being her cabin. So I feel like spirits watching over us or something. It was amazing. But unfortunately, she passed the year after, and I saw her 3 days before she passed suddenly. Nobody knows what happened, but she said, I'm finally going to say I'm an artist. So that was a high note for me. But the one thing we've been doing since September 2020, after the class ended, we've kept a text thread going with this cohort. And they have learned to just use the space to ask for help, be vulnerable, support each other, post an idea, post a picture. And some of them were scared to post photos initially because they didn't know how. There's only 8 of them on there, but they've stayed in touch this whole time. And that community for me has been wonderful, because not only the pandemic has stopped me from being social, I've got this weird thing with my vision. So I haven't left my house for months, and it's been a year and a half. I barely go on the computer, although this last month I've started to feel better, but I'm not going to overwork. But it's been a godsend to know I'm still connected with them all the time. It's so text message and Zoom. I know a lot of people say Zoom and text messages don't do anything, but they do. And we've proven it. So I need to stop talking, and I want Sol or Zhaoji. I haven't seen you for ages.
Hi, guys. I'm very proud of everyone who's speaking today. You know, Cynthia, as I call myself an artist whisperer. I like people to get out there and share their work. This is better because you're sharing your work with people who not only understand, but want to be brave enough to do what you're doing. So I'm very proud of you. Thank you very much for sharing. And Cynthia, we'll talk soon about going
everything.
back.
Everything.
Yeah.
So she used to help me when she was like 13 and 14 years old. When I was out at Hunters Point Shipyard. I actually lived below her and her mom, but she would come help me create the purses and the jewelry that I was having to pump out. And then she would go on LA road trips with me to LA for street fairs. I was a street artist for quite a while. Yeah. And then we just reconnected not that long ago. So, and she's an artist, and she's selling her work through, what's the San Francisco Women Artists Gallery? Are you still there?
Yeah, I'm everywhere.
Yeah.
I don't go to the city anymore right now though, because I'm
doesn't feel safe. Yeah.
No.
Understandable. See, and I haven't been to my studio in 2 years.
Yeah.
But I'm just making it work here. And I'm not even doing that much artwork, but I know I'm incubating it. And I'm just allowing my imagination to just take over my life. So I don't get
You've put out some beautiful artwork. You need to go back and look at your post, dear.
Well, no, those pieces. So what I'm doing now is trying to create so people can buy reproductions through my website, because now I can do it and I don't have to pay up front to have these reproductions. It's print on demand. So I have a lot of great paintings. They're all sold. So I'm now making them available on the website. So I'm hoping, but it's hard when you can't look at things without getting dizzy, but I'm working on it because I need a way to support myself.
Yep.
But I'm healing, tons and tons of healing. So yeah, thank you. Compliment they want to pay us.
I have a question for the artists who presented tonight. First of all, thank you so much, Manon, Paz, Katie, and Cynthia. I'm just stunned by the beauty of your work. Obviously, this work requires a lot of vulnerability on your part, and I'm wondering if you can share what your strategies are for overcoming whatever resistance comes up when you're dealing with these hard subjects. And do you have to ever confront or come in confrontation with any of your loved ones who were involved in some of these stories? And how does that work?
I'll let you guys answer, but just so we don't tell them that we're doing this. But, largely the ones that'll get upset, my experience is they're not going to pay attention to what I'm doing, because that's the beauty of saying you're doing it with art. They dismiss it immediately. So it's kind of a blessing.
I can address some of that. I just want you to know my family background and this current generation is born again Christian. And they are very reticent to give me photographs or share stories with me because they know I will go public with it. And they're really worried about the reputations. And now with the politics at hand, I'm really working hard on trying to bridge the gaps as opposed to feeding into more distress. But just thought I'd say
well,
that.
just so you know, Julie she's been with me since 2014 with Place, but I've also known her for 30 years because she was my first gallery I went into. It was her gallery. And Erin, who asked the question, is a neighbor. We're newly friends. We discovered each other. So yeah, I have a kindred spirit in Marin. But do you guys have Katie, Manon, or Paz?
Yeah, I kind of went the other route. I was just thinking about Katie because one of the things I did in Chicago was I founded the first restorative peer jury program in Chicago Public Schools. And it was because kids were being pushed out for not going to school. So they were more days out of school, and it was disproportionately Black youth and youth of color, low income. And so we did circles with them, restorative circles, because that just to check in with people, that's what we do in Place. We always start in that way. And that was something I started with my family, and that really paved the way for, it was very simple. We started with every time we would have a birthday party, people get together and they party and great. But we'd always gather in a circle and just say, whoever wanted to say some words affirming, we would say that. And that started changing certain dynamics. And I immediately, like when I started learning about Place, because there had been relationships built up through the circle process, when I brought it to my family, they are not Leave It to Beaver, kind of situation. It's, there's a lot of violence, a lot of dysfunction, but I think people are hungry for other ways. And sometimes we have to learn those ways, relearn them again. And so I've always done work in the community, and I kind of skipped over my family, but the people I was trying to save in the community were my family. It was like representations. And so I'm like, let me go back, because I think there's something to learn. And I think when you're healing, you have to have a safe space where you feel you're going to be supported, because it's kind of like when the wound is all infected and you start cleaning it out. It's not this hunky-dory thing. It really hurts. There's a lot of pain. But if it has a protective environment and there is medicine, it will heal, it can heal. And so for me, I've seen it with my own family. We have a lot of different beliefs. It's a lot of learning, and it's a give and take, because I'm learning from them just as much as they're learning from me. And so I'm remembering to honor that, you know. But yeah, I bring it to them, and whoever's there, sorry, my lights keep going off in the office. Whoever's there will come, and they show up, and that's fine.
That's really beautiful. That's amazing. Thanks.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak super quickly, but a lot of the work that I do is very much within comics and making it accessible to people. And so because I share it so publicly, I have family who's follows me on Instagram and on Facebook. So it really censors some of the things that I'm allowed to say and what I'm not allowed to say. It's worked in both ways. One, that where I feel a little stifled in terms of what I'm saying. And so I use different characters, and oftentimes I use myself as that scapegoat within the comics, so that it's so that we not necessarily pass the blame around, but knows that, you know, everyone is a participant within that. And then also I have also used comics as a way to start a discussion with my own family. So I've had, you know, there were times where my family members have said something that I did not appreciate, and I drew it in a comic. And I think for them, of course, when they think, oh, you know, it's a comic and they think it's going to be funny, and, you know, they're willing to enjoy it, they pick it up a little bit faster. And then after that, they realize that there's maybe been a little bit of hurt within that. And we have a discussion off of it. And so there's two ways. One is just that I don't really share it with them, and I have to disguise it in quite a few ways. And then also that when I do tell the truth, it sometimes leaves room for further discussion.
Thank
Really
Katie.
interesting. Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that's really interesting.
I've actually had family members tell me that my mom was lying. It's my female cousins telling me that their fathers, who's my mother's brothers, that my mom's lying, but they didn't say it till after she died. So I just leave them out. If they're ready, I'll let them in, but I'm not actively pursuing them. Go ahead, Manon.
I don't know if I've like confronted family members so much, but I think I did start asking more questions, like trying to figure and doing my own investigating. And sometimes I wasn't met with a lot of like, it was like silence, or like, I didn't learn too much, but from that, maybe learning something. But I know I do kind of censor, I'm like particular about how I word project descriptions if it is talking about like a specific family member. And that's in a way to like protect them, but also I kind of realized that I don't, it's not always necessary to tell everyone everything, you know, like it's okay if like, or at least with like place, we speak about it in more detail amongst ourselves, but even when we're presenting, it's like, we can share that it's like this specific person, but I think it's also not always necessary. And like I had an experience of like being part of place and AWA, and like had this really rich sense of like an art community and people I was really close to. And then I actually went to grad school to an MFA program, and I felt like such a lack of community, and it really made me actually like examine all of this and kind of push back in terms of like reconnecting with like my art community. But some of it was also like sharing about these family things, which I was like, oh, maybe this just, I don't need to share it with them, or like I can make the work, but it doesn't have to be so transparent to, and people will get it who, you know, maybe have a similar experience, or yeah, I don't know. I hope I'm answering your question.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. It's like you can still tell your truth without outing everybody in your life, right? Yeah.
So I would say we're only going to go 5 more minutes because it's going to be 8 o'clock. If anybody wants to stay to talk to me personally, I'll just stay on, but feel free if you have to sign out. Don't no guilt or shame or anything. You could just go if you need to. Thank you so much for spending so much time with us. And we didn't know it was going to go this long, but this kind of stuff, that's what happens. So really embrace it. So if you want to go ahead. If you have some things you want to ask us personally, and I don't even want to make the artist stay if you don't want to stay, because I know it's 11 p.m. at night for Manon. Yeah, like, you know, and then some of you know the difficulty that we had with racism at Marin Museum of Contemporary Art at Marin MoCA. It was very discriminatory towards our group. We were doing a Hungry Ghost show there about family patterns, ancestral trauma. And we weren't met with the kindest responses. And there's a young woman here, Ava, wave Ava. She's Chris's granddaughter, and she was 15 at the time, and she was spending the night here. And I swear she coached me how to deal with difficult people. So Ava, I wanted to recognize you for that. And she lives in Spokane, Washington now. But she is I call them star seeds. She's like an indigo child for sure. I just wanted to introduce you. And there's Frances.
Hello all, thank you so much. Before everyone goes, the artists in particular, and I see some friends here I haven't seen in ages. Kara, Manon, Paz, Katie, profound work, Jilly. All, they speak to who you are and how you chose to engage with your community and your personal journey of healing. All your work was so very different, but profoundly full, right? And I just want to say thank you to all of you guys. And Cynthia, I'm loving your paintings, man.
Thank you.
I'm going to stay on and talk to you.
So Frances has been with us through Place since 2016, I think. Yeah, and she makes amazing pieces. You can see her work and all of her work on the website, which is hopefully going to go through a revamp, thanks to Katie showing up. Youth.